and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the continuation of the UKSimRacing Porsche Cup Season 5, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks our 7th venue of the series, with rounds 13 and 14 being brought to you live from Road America in the state of Wisconsin. Now, this circuit is a classic on the American calendar, whereby it has not changed over the course of its 67-year history, and by that we mean the configuration you're seeing in the background today is the configuration this circuit opened up at all those years ago. And well, what has been the secret to the success of Road America? Well, first, as you can see from the surrounding countryside, it is located in the picturesque countryside of Wisconsin, near the village of Elkhart Lake, and with the open raceways, indeed the extended straights, and the rather technical and tricky corner sequences, this is a circuit that does not need change because it brings together the best racing aspects across the globe, whether it be battling under braking into turn 1, alternatively the run through technical sequences and trying to find that balance, or just the slipstream draft on the straight up to the next corner. You name it, Road America delivers on it, and indeed it's going to be delivering us some fantastic racing action today as we inch ever closer to the conclusion of the season. With only 6 rounds remaining, including the 2 for tonight, our drivers now we started to get a slight itch with regards to the fact that the points are starting to run a little bit dry, but their appetite's not running dry, I can tell you that. And as we get ready to go, a little bit of housekeeping for you. You're tuning in live via the official UKSimRacing YouTube channel. Indeed, you can go to youtube.com and search for UKSimRacing and tune in there. And indeed, if you are tuning in right now, why not leave a like? Alternatively, subscribe for future broadcasts here, because indeed we do have our weekly broadcast. But as our drivers get set and the racing looks to continue on here, of course, last time out we were in downtown Detroit in the state of Michigan, and we're staying in the United States for today, but with only 2 more venues after today, well, it's only fair that we do take a look to the season ahead, and we'll see what still lies in wait. Or as we skip ahead here, we can see that after today we'll be making our way to Spain on the 23rd of February for the circuit to Barcelona, Catalonia, and in rounds of 15 and 16, well, that could be where we potentially see some championships wrapped up early should results go the certain way of drivers today and next week. And then after our round next week, we make our way back to the United States of America for the Sebring circuit on the old airfields of World War II for rounds 17 and 18 to bring the curtain down on the 2nd of March and indeed crown our champions. But of course, that's what lies in wait for us, but it would not be unfair of us to give you a quick recap of what has been in the past. And of course, we started all the way back on the 5th of January 2023 when all new year sim racing and all new season of the Porsche Cup, and we start off at Alton Park in the United Kingdom. And there on the very narrow road surface at Alton Park, we saw many of our drivers be brave, but it was Marcel Fritsch who came away the biggest scorer of them all, overall in the gold class with a dramatic end to the feature race. There's no question about it. Then we made our way from the United Kingdom to Brazil for rounds 3 and 4, and there on the South American continent in Interlagos, Brazil, we got to see on the 12th of January many a battle in both the gold and silver classes. Also major drama, particularly in the sprint, where a number of our gold drivers ended up in a major incident before they even made it to turn number 1. But either way, despite the incidents, we saw some classic racing, and also we saw the pressure really build to the likes of Lee Holmes and Tim Darracott in the gold class there. Then we made our way for rounds 5 and 6 back to the European continent for the French circuit at Circuit de Nevers at Magny-Cours, recently introduced to iRacing on the 19th of January. We saw the technical circuit did catch out quite a few drivers, including the likes of James Kirstop in the silver class, before we then made our way to neighbouring Germany on the 26th of January for the Hockenheimring Baden-Württemberg circuit. And there at the Grand Prix circuit, the Tilke design circuit, well, Tilke definitely delivered in the fact that whilst it was rather technical in nature, we got to see our drivers really trying to make big moves on one another. And of course, there was the rise of Philipp Hammer on his home circuit, whereby Hammer made his way through the field in the feature race in the final 10 minutes, gaining 7 places in quick succession to take the win and make it a double at the Hockenheimring. Then we made our way over to Norway for rounds 9 and 10 at Rudskogen Motor Centre on the 2nd of February. It was a very tight and narrow circuit, much like at the Hockenheimring, and we saw the win streak of Philipp Hammer finally cut short, not able to pick up the win in what was the feature race, but still 5 wins on the bounce, no mean feat. And also there we got to see the rise of Willacy Racing, who managed to put together a stellar set of results, and indeed a P1, P2, but at the same time as well, that was the win in both classes going to their drivers, and will set in the history books on fire with regards to the Porsche Cup. And last time out in rounds 11 and 12, we made our way initially to the United States of America for the Detroit City circuit of Belle Isle, or the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle, and there we saw in the rather narrow circuit, our only street circuit on the calendar. Well, there are plenty of sparks and there are plenty of bruises for our drives towards the walls, but it was Philipp Hammer who reigned supreme in the gold class, and we got to see it in the silver class. Well, it was another rise for Ash England, albeit Philipp Hammer not able to make it 2 out of 2, of course, in the races, but able to take the sprint and run quite well in regards to the feature. But we also got to see how it was Cameron Willacy who brought home in the gold class in the feature race. But as we get ready to go into tonight, then we should firstly give you an update with regards to our standings, with regards to how things stand in progress. And we can see here in the Drivers' Championship, after 12 of 18 rounds, Philipp Hammer leads the way by a growing margin of 31 points over Lee Holmes. The WS Racing esports driver has looked infallible when it comes to outright pace, whether it be in qualifying or the races. The man who seems to be absolutely consistent from start to finish and seems non-distracted at any point in the racing. And will he find himself distracted today, given the fact the pressure may be building a little bit and we've only got 6 more races to go? Well, my gut feeling says for Philipp Hammer it's just going to be another day at the office. Indeed, the pressure is going to be on his pursuers, including Lee Holmes from 88 Tip Racing Team Purple, who on 104 points now finds himself only 8 points clear of rising star in the gold class of Cameron Willacy. Of course, we have to remind ourselves that the Willacy Racing driver joined the gold class as of this season after winning in the silver class in season 4, and whilst he had a bit of difficulty in finding his feet initially, the last few rounds have been very kind to the Willacy Racing driver. He's also put in the effort, to be fair, and he has been rewarded by moving up to P3. 5 points clear of Tim against Darracott in the Effect Esports Machinery. The 91-point driver there continued to try and bring the hunt on for P3 and upwards, but he's got to keep in mind that Emil Koopmans is not too far away on 83 points for Apex Missers there in P5, albeit we're not going to be seeing the Apex Missers driver join us tonight, unfortunately, due to personal circumstances, but we do wish him well and hope he returns as of the next 2 rounds. Marcel Fritsch from WS Racing Esports there on 79 points, not quite inside the top 5, falling out of the top 5 for the first time this season, but continued to try and fight his way back into the top 5. And then we have a sizable gap from our top 6 to the rest of the field there, a margin of 22 points to simracing's Joe Newman, who holds a 4-point advantage over Samuel K. Sproul, the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver, who in turn is ahead of Danny Hugendorf for Apex Missers and Nathan Foster for simracing, who complete the top 10. Unfortunately, we're not going to be seeing Samuel Sproul take to the field anytime soon due to personal circumstances, and it is the same for his teammate Corey Lazarus. So we are going to be without Blackout Motorsport New Zealand for a few rounds, and we do hope they can potentially return for the season finale if they can, because we do miss them. But as we see our drivers all there lined up on the standings, with Simon Bamber meanwhile best the rest there in P11 on 32 points. The privateer not quite having the run of form perhaps he wanted to in the midpoint of the season, but perhaps looking to try and close the gap a little bit more as the season progresses towards its natural conclusion. And he's got Ryan Walker from Satellite Racing only 7 points behind, but also is 2 clear of Corey Lazarus, with Steve Hughes, Nathan Scott, Dan Blackwell and Andy Jones completing the standings for our gold drivers. Now coming on to the silver class, meanwhile, we can see here the complexion is rather similar. We have a runaway leader in the form of Ash England for Willacy Racing, and he is 40 points clear of fellow teammate Jack Ward. Now, of course, last time out in the racing of which was at Detroit, we should correct ourselves firstly for the fact it was Ash England who actually had difficulties in the feature race, wasn't able to make it 2 out of 2, and instead had a very early retirement, and Jack Ward was the driver who came home for the silver win in the feature there. So it was Willacy Racing who dominated in the feature, but it wasn't to be for Ash England the way he wanted it to be, and with the 40-point delta there, well, right now Ash England, if he picks up 2 good results today, he'll be well on his course to put in one hand on the championship crown with what is effectively 2 rounds to go come the season finale. And Jack Ward now sits in P2 ahead of Craig Shield by a margin that has grown to what is there 23 points ahead of the 88 Tech Racing Team Cyan driver. Now Shield in return is in a bit of a rivalry with his sister team driver from Team Red of Shane Piggott, and we can see Roxanne Marshall there falling to P5, equal points to Glenn Humberstone and Alistair Hatcher. And the key point here is the 88 Tech Racing army continues to rise through the ranks, and they're all trying to charge their way into the top 5. And can Humberstone or Hatcher get one up on one another and get clear of Roxanne Marshall, who unfortunately not be attending tonight due to personal circumstances, but we do wish Roxanne Marshall well. James Kersott, meanwhile, further 17 points behind in P8, the privateer, perhaps the unluckiest of our privateers, indeed out of our silver class drivers this season. He's been showing stellar pace throughout, but he's not quite had the opportunity to completely show and get the results that he feels he should be rewarded with, and I think we'd happily agree with him there. And then we can see Matt Maddox from BDM Racing ahead of teammate Daz Fellows, who joined us as of last round, and Daz Fellows immediately jumping up to P10 there, but a good score there of what is 27 points, 27 points behind Matt Maddox, and looking to try and close the gap to his fellow team driver. Then best the rest, Ross McFown, 24 points, P11, ahead of Ashley Coverdale for Simon Racing Academy, and Darren Ills completes the standings there for 88 Tip Racing Team Red on 6 points. But coming onto the Teams Championship standings, we can see here the complexion in the Teams Championship, it's a little bit tighter. We do have a two-way fight at the very top of the standings. WS Racing Esports lead the way on 196 points, 26 points clear of Willacy Racing, but Willacy Racing, of course, are making a huge overhaul of points as of the last round, and therefore jumping into P2 ahead of Apex Missers. And now Apex Missers find themselves in a bit of no man's land. They want to hunt down the top two, but the gap stands at 46 points. And are they going to be more interested perhaps in having to fend off 88 Racing Team Purple, given the fact the Delta now has dropped down to a margin of what is only 19 points between them? simracing Racing, meanwhile, in P5 on 104 points. They could not be closer to 88 Racing Team Purple, with Effect Esports in P6 they're on 82 points, 17 clear of Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, with 88 Racing Team Cyan, 24 Hour Punty People, and Satellite Racing completing the top 10. And then best of the rest is 88 Racing Team Red, 2 points off, with BDM Racing out on 12 points ahead of simracing Racing Academy on 9, and DCW Racing, last but not least, yet to score a point in the championship. As we come from our championship then, let's go on to our circuit for today, and it is the full course of Road America. As previously mentioned, located near the village of Elkhart Lake in Sheboygan County of Wisconsin in the United States of America. As you can see from the circuit map provided to us by simracingwiki.com and also from iRacing.com, and we're using that today due to a little bit of better resolution quality. The circuit consists of 14 corners, and with it these 14 corners are stapled in history, in the fact that you've seen most major road racing classes across international and domestic calendars race around this circuit. And as our drivers make the way into turn 1 on the fast charging start-finish straight, they'll break the way into a sharp right-hander, albeit a bit of a sweep of its sharpness, and as they make their way through the kink of 2 downhill into the braking zone for 3, they'll hit hard on the brakes into the right-angled right-hander at turn 3 before making their way down the moraine sweep into turn 5. In the long run through the kink of 4, they'll get ready to battle their way on the brakes into a downhill braking zone, and turn 5 a very narrow corner where there's only going to really be the opportunity to go one wide. If you're on the outside, you're going to be going deep, and whoever emerges on the inside then makes their way up the hill into turn number 6, a blind braking zone uphill into the apex, and particularly in cars out anti-lock braking systems, and our Porsche Cup machines, our 9N2 machines do not have anti-lock braking systems. Turn 6 could be the corner that we see plenty of drivers make their way off the circuit, given how tricky it is with the uphill braking zone. But as they make their way out of turn 6, they'll head through the right-hander at turn 7 and head down towards turn number 8 into the braking zone there for the left-handed right-angle corner. And as they come into the carousel turns 9 and 10, the double apex, the aim of the game will be to try and get back on the power and return to the full throttle as soon as possible as they clear turn 10 and make their way up towards 11. Known as the kink, we won't be running the chicane sequence there, of course. Our drivers will be going flat out through the kink or as close as possible to it, using the downforce to their advantage. As they make their way out of 11, it's the long charge down towards Canada Corner at turn number 12, where the circuit turns uphill for a brief moment through the sweep of 13 into 13A, where it's going to be a very tricky sequence there, that left-hander. And as they make their way on out, we could see a few drivers make their way off circuit, but they'll need to bring it back on circuit for turn number 14 and get the best possible exit out of there as they make their way into the start-finish straight to do it all again over a multitude of laps. Now, as for our rules, let's give you a quick reminder. In terms of qualifying, a lone qualifying format shall be used, whereby all our drivers take to an isolated instance of the circuit by their lonesome, and they'll have 8 minutes to set their best possible time and an unlimited number of laps that will go with it. But given the average lap time we're seeing around here is in the region of 2 minutes and 10 seconds in terms of race pace, we're expecting our drivers are only going to have 1 out lap and 2 fast laps in order to get that time on the board, given the fact we do not have overtime in qualifying. Race-wise, races shall commence via a standing start, as is the tradition, with the sprint race grid being set based on the results of qualifying, and the feature race grid being a partial reverse grid based on the results of the sprint race. What does that mean in practice when we say that it's based on the results of the sprint race? Well, wherever our drivers are finished, that will factor into where they start on the feature race grid, but we also have the qualifier there of the top 8 positions being inverted, and what that means is we have a partial reverse grid, whereby our winner of the sprint race will be starting P8 on the feature race grid. Meanwhile, as you go from P1 down to P8, we see the grid being reversed, with our 8th place finisher in the sprint race starting on pole for the feature race, and then 9th downwards in terms of the sprint race finishers. That's exactly what they'll start on the grid for the feature. There are no mandatory pit stop requirements in the sprint race or the feature race. 1 fast repair is available in each race, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 14 or more instant points. Well, that's enough about rules and regulations. I know what you're all here for, to see the racing. Well, the race is not too far away, and as we bring our race information up for today, well, let's take you through our scheduled times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time at UTC. PC, where we'll be in just under 1.5 minutes time. We'll make our way into the qualifying session, 8 minutes in duration, and immediately after that jump away to the grid for the 12-minute sprint race. That'll kick off at approximately 8:10 this evening, and then we'll be taking a brief breather before returning just before 8:30 for the 30-minute feature there. 2.5 times the time duration, and with it of course comes that conundrum of time management and keeping it calm and keeping it consistent, as our drivers here in a rather beautiful day with the sun shining on down, only partial cloud. It's going to be a warm track temperature, as we can see there, an ambient temperature currently at 28 degrees centigrade, but a track temperature of 39 degrees. Those tyres are going to feel some punishment and wear in the feature race, and that could really throw a spanner in the works for a good number of drivers. But speaking of our drivers as they make the way on around, we do look here to Jack Ward as he heads on through. Of course, the Willacy Racing picking up that stellar result last time out at the Detroit circuit at Belle Isle, and can he make it another win in the silver class today? That'll be at the name of his game. But as he makes his way up towards the start-finish straight here, with just under a minute left to go and heading into the braking zone, we'll all set here as the number 48 driver. And meanwhile, we look to Marcel Fritsch here, the WS Racing esports driver from Austria. And we should give a special shout out, because we do see that a good number of you in the YouTube chat, and give a shout out to all of you, and particularly to Holger there, who does say go Philipp Hammer and Marcel Fritsch for WS Racing Esports. And Holger beating us to the broadcast actually going live, so you know you've got a die-hard fan there for WS Racing Esports. And well, a special shout out to you, Holger. Also saying hello to Craig Tittleston, who's wishing everyone a good race and looking forward to watching the racing. And also we say hello there to Medbo, and well, they're a little bit of a joke in the UKSimRacing Discord, and Medmo's making reference to that. Same with regards to the fact that with AI commentators recently potentially being revealed, and well, am I a robot or not? But again, who am I? I haven't actually introduced myself on this broadcast today. I'm your host and commentator, ladies and gentlemen, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And well, speaking of following on, we make our way into qualifying. But as we do make our way into qualifying, we just like to let you know that if you are a long-time supporter of UKSimRacing, if you ever wondered how you can potentially give back to UKSimRacing, did you know there's a way to do so through our affiliates? And all of our affiliate details are published, well, would normally be published on our website, but unfortunately our website's currently going through a bit of an upgrade and renovation process. But we can still take you through exactly how you can find out a little bit more about our affiliates, because UKSimRacing is affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere, and Demon Tweaks. And if you do head to our website, which is up on screen, that's uksimracing.co.uk today, well, there's no page currently available where you can see our affiliates, but you can click on the Discord icon at the top of the screen there. You can see it right at the top on the right hand side, and with that you can go to our official Discord, which you'll need to join anyway if you do want to take part in any of our official series. And we do have some discount codes available from our affiliates in our Discord, and do remember, a little purchase could go a long way in supporting UKSimRacing, because if you make a purchase through our affiliate discount codes, well, you'll get a discount, we get a kickback at UKSimRacing, and all of our profits are invested back into a future series, because we are a non-profit organisation, and therefore that's why a little purchase could go a long way for our community as we make our way into 2023. But speaking of drivers trying to make the way right now, well, we do look to none other than Aaron Trester as we see him making his way on down. And Aaron Trester, a newcomer to the season as of today, and we wish him all the best on his debut, the privateer, racing in what is the silver class. He heads on through there from the United Kingdom. And will the number 11 driver, I think, being a very keen and avid watcher of the series so far, and he's decided he wants to get out on circuit in the Porsche Cup 992 machine, and who can blame him, to be fair, when the standard of competition is so high, well, you want to give it your utmost. Well, I can tell you right now, a little part of me as well in the commentary booth does want to get out to the circuit with these guys, but now I have to remind myself, my ability in the Porsche Cup car is nowhere near the ability of our drivers here, and therefore I'm just happy to see how they all get on. And we see Aaron Trester making his way through the final corner after his first warm-up lap, and he's not going to have too many laps. As we say, it'll be one warm-up lap and then 2 fast laps, and our drivers will run out of time. We may see some drivers decide to do an abort back to the pits if they do but their first lap, in terms of they get it wrong on that initial fast lap. But indeed, the States could not be high, and we may see a significant shake-up in the grid as we do look to Ash England making his way down towards turn number 1, and we jump on board here with the Willacy Racing drivers. He comes on through turn 1 in third gear and powers his way down towards turn 3. And the charge down here, onto the brakes he goes, looking for his brake marker on the left-hand side. Another third gear corner here, and you'll notice very similar complex to turn number 1. It's a sweeper in third gear as you build the power back up. Now it's the long charge all the way down, albeit we briefly lose Ash England there. And I do believe slight connectivity issues, but hopefully those are not going to plague his whole on-board lap as he makes his way down through the kink of 4. And now into the drop and getting ready to break into turn 5. Breaking out approximately 120 yards from corner apex just before the 2-board. And as he comes on through, sweetly done there as he makes his way up the hill. Blind summit now as he breaks his way on the rise into turn number 6, down to second gear. No lock up there, no hesitation. And as he comes into turn 7, up into 4th, lifts off the throttle, runs a little bit wide. The grass catches him, but he catches the car in return. Down up to 5th gear, now breaking his way into turn number 8. Coming down to second gear, got to be patient here at turn 8. We'll see a lot of drives go round if they're not patient. And as he comes into the carousel through turn 9, up to 4th gear, bounce the throttle, down to 3rd, get the nose to tuck in. As soon as he feels it bite, he's got to get on that throttle as soon as possible through 10, because now he's got to carry all the speed up to the kink. And let's just listen in. A very slight lift there, but otherwise full commitment of Ash England as he makes his way through the kink. The fastest point on the lap now as he heads up towards Canada corner, 163 miles an hour before he went onto the anchors from 6th down to 3rd gear. Through turn 12 he goes, uses the runoff space there to his advantage, and as he comes up the ride through 13 into 13A, brings the car over from right to left, attacks the corner in 4th gear, and now onto the brakes of turn number 14, drops it down 2 gears to 3rd gear, comes on out of the corner now at approximately 73 miles an hour. He charges back up through the gearbox here to the timeline, and what's it going to be for Ash England? Of course it wasn't a perfect lap, but he's going to be thinking he's done the best he can to get a good lap on the board. And as he crosses the timeline, we see Philipp Hammer with 208.337. Meanwhile, Ash England, I believe that lap has not counted given the run wide at turn number 7, so he's got to do it again. And England will know he's running out of opportunities already, as we do say hello there to Joel F1, and also we do say hello there to BRM Sim Racing. And well, good evening to you guys, and I thank you very much for the compliment there, BRM Sim Racing. I do really appreciate that. And indeed, it was a sad day when we did hear of the loss of Murray Walker, but indeed the man who filled the hearts of many a youngster and adult when watching television, whether it was British Touring Car, All-30, Formula 1 or other series. And well, as we do see Shane Piggott making his way on down right now into turn number 3. Of course, we've rode on board for a lap, but what does it take to have a good lap at Road America, and also to have a good amount of racing at Road America? Well, the thing about this circuit is because you have so much grass on the extremities of the circuit, you do need to be smart with the way you drive. You can't overly push it. There's not too many runoff spaces. You do have some runoff areas, such as turn number 5 here, but with those runoff areas, you do have quite a lot of dust that sits laying there on the runoff area, and as a result, that's only going to compromise your grip into the next few corners. So at Road America, you need to be aware of the width of the circuit. You need to know just how much you can push, when you can get back onto the throttle, and how quickly you can return to full throttle. And if you get that right, you're about 90% of the way there. The last 10%, of course, is being as aggressive as possible on the brakes, but then again, aggression here will only go so well in terms of your ability to be able to keep the car smart and stable. And well, we have seen that over the course of the season, where we've had some drivers who put in absolutely phenomenal qualifying laps, only for it to all come undone in the race when they haven't quite been able to keep the rear end settled or the Porsche Cup car. But we've still got plenty of drivers yet to put a time on the board, and I think we could be expecting a mix up in the grid. And speaking of one of the biggest names who's yet to get a time on the board, albeit I think he will just about get his time in if this one does count, it is Danny Hugendorn here for Apex Missers, of course representing his team today in the absence of what is his teammate Emil Koopmans. And as he makes his way through the right-hand return at number 12, heading up towards turns 13 and 14, where he's going to invest it all on a single lap. Because of course he won't get another lap after this. We see Ash England moves up to P4 overall there in silver pole position on 209.409. Marcel Fritsch moves up to P5. They both head to the pit lane, knowing that it's all said and done for them. But as Hugendorn comes to the timeline, what's it going to be as he gets ready to hit the mark here? No lap at the moment. It would start him right on the final row, but he crosses the line. We haven't had any indication this has been an invalidated lap, and he jumps up to P4 of a 208.803. A very nice lap there from Hugendorn, and that may just be enough to seal him on the second row of the grid. Have we got anybody else coming through? We've got Joe Newman who's crossing the timeline. The simracing driver going to be one of the last laps to come in. He goes P9 overall, always effective P7 in class. Craig Shield yet to get a time on the board. He'll just get on through. Glenn Humberstone, however, will not be getting a lap on the board, given the fact he's in the pit lane right now. Craig Shield comes in, so that is qualifying effectively complete, ladies and gentlemen. We will not be getting any more laps in, and it is Philipp Hammer who takes pole position by almost half a second over Tim Darracott overall and in the gold class. And meanwhile, in the silver class, it is Ash England who takes pole position P6 overall, with an advantage of what was in the end only half a tenth over teammate Jack Ward, who lines up P8. But that's qualifying complete, and now we make our way to the grid for round number 13. So as they line up on the grid, this is how they line up for the sprint at Road America. Philipp Hammer takes pole position for WS Racing Esports, adding another pole to the bank ahead of Effect Esports' Tim Darracott, who starts P2. Behind the gold pair, it's Cameron Willacy for Willacy Racing, who is joined on the second row for Apex Missers, Danny Hugendorn. Then on the third row, we have Simon Racing's Nathan Foster, who put in a very late lap, but a good one with it, and he is joined by Ash England from Willacy Racing on the third row, who lines up as your silver pole sitter. Marcel Fritsch from WS Racing Esports and Jack Ward for Willacy Racing make up your fourth row, with the Willacy Racing driver there second place in the silver class, right behind his teammate in terms of the lineup on the grid. And then it's Joe Newman of Simon Racing, who is joined on the fifth row by ATEC Racing Team Red's Shane Piggott, who completes the top 10. Outside the top 10, Aaron Tressel on his debut lines up P4 in the silver class. A good job there from the privateer, and he's joined by ATEC Racing Team Science Alistair Hatcher. And then on what is the seventh row of the grid, it's James Kersott, the privateer, who is joined by BDM Racing's Darren Fellows. And on the final complete row of the grid, it's BDM Racing's Matt Maddox, who's pipped to the post by Darren Fellows, his teammate. And there's ATEC Racing Team Purple's Glenn Humberstone. And on the final row, not putting the time on the board, much like his teammate of Humberstone, it is Craig Shield there for ATEC Racing Team Cyan, albeit they're not quite teammates. They're all part of a single team unit, but they are in rival teams, if you will. But as our grid is gradually filling here, well, of course, you could cut the tension with a knife. All our drivers will be wary of the fact it is a long run down to turn one. It's one of the longest runs to turn one on the calendar, and with that, of course, anything can happen under braking into the opening corner. Nobody will want to make the mistake from behind and send the field astray with regards to cold brakes and cold tyres, but of course a little bit of enthusiasm may just carry a driver a little bit too far into the corner. As everybody gets ready to go racing, we are 10 seconds away from the gridding process being complete, and it will be to Philipp Hammer to see if he can hold off the charge from his peers as they make their way into the opening of right hander. With the grid set, we await the lights. One red light, two red lights, three red lights, four red lights, five red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for race number one of today, as Philipp Hammer gets a good start with Tim Darracott not making it to the grid and therefore starting from the pit lane. But you can see Danny Hugendorn, they're getting a really good start on the right of your picture, and as they make their way into turn one, Hugendorn's going to try and outbrake Hammer. If he can get this done early, it may disrupt Hammer's flow, but as they come on through here, you can see everyone to a stern, and meanwhile Alistair Hatcher goes deep, and as they roll their way out of turn one, James Kersott gaining one place as a result as they make their way down to the braking zone. And meanwhile Matt Maddox, they're trying to go around the outside of Craig Shield. Shield getting his nose in there, making sure to battle it hard for ATEC Racing Team Cyan. As they come out of turn 3, they now all settle down for a brief moment. But meanwhile, one of the biggest losers at the start of this race, Ash England losing one place overall. But the key thing is he's been dropped back to his silver peers, and now Shane Piggott and Jack Ward are squaring off for P2 in the silver class as they make their way down to turn 5. And it does look as though there's Shane Piggott. Takes a look up the inside, but he can't quite find it on the brakes. They make their way out the left-hander. Ward goes a little bit deep, and they give one another just enough space to re-emerge up towards turn number 6. Piggott's still there. He's still trying to tease out that move. He's trying to get Ward to simply outbrake himself. Meanwhile, got a car off there. That's why the BDM Racing machines and Wood defending versus Piggott as they head through 7 and down towards 8. But finally, they settle their differences, and Piggott's not able to make the move count as they head on down. Meanwhile, James Kersott in a major shunt on the car there, and I believe it's the same for Matt Maddox, who's gone to the tyre barrier, and Maddox struggling to get the car turned around. I think the front right suspension may have been taking a big whack as a result, and it has not worked out at all for the BDM Racing drive. But the one driver it has worked out for at the start of this race, Philipp Hammer, held off the charge early on from Hugendorn, and now Cameron Willacy is close. They make the way through the kink for the first time of asking. Full attack here all the way down towards turn number 12 into Canada corner. Hammer staying safe for now, but you can see Willacy there definitely trying to make a move as they get ready to bounce onto the brakes. Nathan Foster trying to go around the outside here, and Marcel Fritsch, in fact it is Fritsch, who I think is now defending as they make their way out of the corner, as in fact Nathan Foster tried to gain the ground. Fritsch went defensive, got it back, and now Fritsch holding on to P4, and as they come out of turn 13, we can see behind that Now Ash England and Joe Newman exchanging places as well, with the SimRacing driver in the 997 machine trying to get closer to his gold peers, but he needs to get clear of the silver driver in front of him first in order to be able to do so. But as they make their way across the timeline, after one lap, it is Philipp Hammer who leads to UKSimRacing Esports header Cameron and Willacy P2, Danny Hugendorn in P3, they're followed up by Marcel Fritsch P4, and then we have Nathan Foster followed by Ash England, your silver leader of Ash England. But we look back to Nathan Foster, who again tries to make the move on the outside here versus Fritsch. They come through one, but the thing is on that outside line there's not much grip and you can't carry as much speed on corner exit, and now Nathan Foster is looking exposed here as they make their way down towards turn number 3. England up the inside and Foster will look to cut back and get the momentum off the corner to run it down, but it looks like it's a bit of a concertina effect there as Ash England struggling to get the power down coming out of 3, and it's led to everybody stacking up, and now Joe Newman trying to come through here as they make their way down towards 5. Now can Newman find a way past what is Ward, or will he have to tuck in? I think Ward goes the outside there to just give Newman the ability to come on through, and I think the two silver drivers there in what is the Willacy Racing machines, cognizant of the fact the SimRacing pair are trying to squeeze on through and battle for gold class positions, but it's getting a little bit scrappy here as they make their way through. There's a mistake from Jack Ward, who goes off into the gravel. He just catches the car in time, and Ward there just going a bit deep into turn 6. He rejoins, albeit safely, and as he makes his way up to speed now, well, for Ward that's a huge blow after what's looking to be a dead certain P2 in class as a minimum, and another sign of an overall top 5 on the cards. But as they make their way into turn 8, Darren Pellers and Astor Hatcher will be looking at this, rubbing their hands together with glee and thinking, right, let's take on one of the big names in class. For as they make their way out of the carousel, well, at any moment's notice, a small mistake could prove very costly, as we just seen for Jack Ward. And speaking of mistakes in an instance, what exactly happened earlier on is the big question, to when we saw, I believe it was Matt Maddox and James Kersop, both in an instant at turn number 6, but we do get a replay. As they made their way into the corner, we're looking for Maddox here as he came in. Well, there's James Kersop. Now Maddox, well, the rear of the car snapping loose completely into the tyre barrier. Meanwhile, James Kersop going on around. We will try and take a look back at what exactly happened to Kersop here as he came on through into the corner. We can see that I believe there was a little bit of grass from Maddox, but contact there between Kersop and Fellows, it looks like. Just a small knock to the left rear quarter panel from the driver's perspective, and Kersop being sent on around as he tried to get the power down, and that whack to the wall definitely crumpling the front right side of the car as well. So that has really been a double blow for Kersop, and his bad luck continues. And what only moments ago, of course, we saw the mistake from Jack Ward, and we take a look back at that. Same corner, but one lap later, and Ward there on the grass, much like for Maddox only moments ago, but Ward keeping it out of the tyre barrier and keeping it pointing in the right direction. Maddox, meanwhile, could not get the car stopped in time, and well, for Jack Ward, it's definitely been a mistake, but it could have been far worse in terms of really blunting his aspirations in the sprint race here at Road America. But as we return to live pictures now, and permanently for a time, we do look from Alistair Hatcher up to your race leaders here, and well, Philipp Hammer right now just running this race comfortably. And of course, for Philipp Hammer, we have typically seen that he has been the driver to beat when it comes to outright pace, where it's been in qualifying or the races. But I think Hammer today may just be playing things a little bit calmer. Karen Willacy's definitely keeping him honest at the moment, but of course, when you're the leader, one thing you do have to your advantage is if you've got a lot of pace available to you and the driver behind is running at a certain pace that you think you match, you can of course just simply balance the gap. And the gap of a second is quite comfortable with regards to the fact there's a few slipstream zones. We've seen them of course in the run through the kink and down towards Canada corner, also the start finish straight and the run down the main sweep. But the key factor here is if Hammer feels as though he can control this race, then he'll feel very safe as he goes on through. He won't need to push it that final 5 to 10% to open up that gap any further. The gap does seem to be quite stable. But meanwhile, as we do look to Tim Darracott here, well, it's a good point there from Medmo in the fact that we were wondering what happened to Tim Darracott in terms of him not making the grid. But Tim Darracott has started from the pit lane and he is making ground very quickly as he looks at the move here on Aaron Tressler into turn it number 12. Up the inside he goes. Tressler tries to hold off, and as they make their way out Canada corner, there's only one way that's going. It's for the Brit of Tim Darracott, who makes his way up into P8 and continues to charge through the field. When he's picked his way clear of the silver pack initially, he's got one more silver driver in front of him in the form of Ash England, albeit he's in P5. But his next two targets, including this man, will Nathan Foster, their gold drivers, and now Tim Darracott can definitely try to resurge his way through the field. Albeit I wonder if Tim Darracott at this point is looking at the fact he's in P8 and thinking, actually, do I really want to gain any more ground because I'll be on reverse grid pole? But I think Darracott can afford to gain 1 or 2 more places to get some extra points in this sprint. And of course, we do know he's one of the fastest drivers in class, and therefore he may just be able to retake the lead at the start of the feature. But meanwhile, speaking of taking positions here, Alistair Hatcher looking up the inside of his dad's fellows there as they make the way on through, or Darren Fellows, he's known him for Daz to his close friends, and as they make the way out to 1 and down towards 3, we can see the 964 driver here in the 8 Racing Team sign card just not quite able to make the ground he so desires. But meanwhile, looking from one silver driver to another, we can see Ash England here under pressure from Newman. Newman looking up the inside. I think the simracing driver is going to be given all the width of the road surface there by Ash England, who doesn't want to fight anymore. I think England's seen what happens when you start to get entangled with another class. He saw it happen to his teammate at turn 6 a few laps ago, whereby Wood just simply went straight on in, a little bit of hesitation under braking to take it to the grass with the rear right tyre under braking, and now England will not be looking to make the same mistake. But meanwhile, speaking of mistakes, it does look as though Fritsch getting a poor run out to turn number 7 and into 8 they go. Joe Newman up the inside, but of course the corner now curves around to the right for the carousel, and Newman on that outside line is going to have to tuck in as we jump on board here with the simracing 997 machine. And well, as we just listen in here, he'll close up and look for the move. He's going to go for into the kick. This is very bold from Newman. You don't normally go too wide for the kick. You can see that unsells the car, and as he catches it there, that could have been very close to tears. Ash England was within a tenth there as that unfolded. Well, he backed off completely, we can tell you, from the timings that we've got available. But Joe Newman, they're taking a little bit of a sniff on the inside of the king, and that has definitely compromised his run there. We're listening to see how close he could get in the run through the king down towards Canada Corner. But in the end, Newman getting too close too early. I think now he'll wait his turn with regards to the fact if he does stay that close into the kick on the next lap, he'll look to pounce as he makes his way out to Canada Corner instead. But meanwhile, we look back from them very shortly to Jack Wood and Glenn Humberstone, as we can see here that Jack Wood looking for the move past Shield as they make the way up the hill, and Humberstone following on through. And as they make the way up towards turn number 1, which they push along there, Humberstone's as close as possible to reach out and touch the rear wing. The Jack Wood's car, the Willacy Racing driver there, keeping on the outside. Humberstone looks up the inside. Humberstone's not going to let this go. You can understand why he doesn't want Wood breaking away in the championship as they make the way to 1. Humberstone just catches it in time on the brakes, but Wood gets the cutback as they make the way down to 2 and into 3. Now, can Wood get it all said and done here, or does he decide to play it conservatively? 9, it's a long run to 5. Well, he's gone all in here, but as we jump on board the gearbox now, you can see there the 8 Racing Team Purple machine closing very gradually here. The gap's 1.5 tenths. But Wood's had a good run off the corner, plus also a little bit less damage on the car. Means he's not losing as much aero, but now Humberstone getting closer and closer. They head down towards the braking zone. He looks up the inside. Wood on the outside on the left of your picture. And can he get the door shut? No, he cannot. He goes deep, and it's almost a lock up there for Wood as he tanks to the runoff area, hits the bump in the runoff space, and now looks at the run up into turn 6. Well, Humberstone's going to be wary of it here. Wood tries to open the door up. He does so successfully there. As you can see, Humberstone gives him the space, but as they go too wide into 7, this is where the road surface starts to narrow in terms of the apex line, and Humberstone just needs to hold a defensive line here into turn 8, and he can cause the whole group to back up into what is the battle behind them of P14, P15 of Fellows versus Hatcher, and this is really brilliant driving from Humberstone. He's really taking the fight to Wood, and who can blame him here in the fact that Willacy Racing P1, P2 in the silver class, and I think 8 Racing really want to put a spanner and a dent into that to make sure it's not just the Willacy Racing show. But as they make the way up towards the kink now into the right hand, all line of stern coming on through. Meanwhile, up the road, Tim Darracott battling his way round the outside there. Marcel Fritsch in the run into the braking zone for turn number 12 into Canada Corner, and Darracott continues to rise on through. He's recently passed Nathan Foster as well. We'll get your replay of that very shortly. But as they head on through into turn number 14, Craig Shield meanwhile caught up behind what is Ward as they make the way to 13. No way through to the 8 Racing Team Cyan driver, and I think for now he's got to save it all to the final lap, being aware of course that he does have Shane Pigger, who's getting closer and closer as well. And I think for them, they both want to try and pull the cork out the proverbial positioning bottle, and that Wood seems to be personifying right now as they make the way on to the final lap around here in the sprint. We can see Shield having to be a bit more defensive now rather than offensive, and Pigot's going to take the alert, there's no question about it. Shield brings it into the middle of the road, Pigot gets alongside, but as they make the way to the braking zone, Pigot backs out. They're deciding that it's better to wait for the run out of turn number 3, but as they head on through, and meanwhile Humberstone under pressure here out of 1 into 3 by Ward. He's going to defend on the inside here. Ward's going to look for the cutback, but he turns it too soon. Humberstone sees it's coming and simply drags the car along the inside line, and now the gap of 3 tenths, they make the way down the next straight. You can see Humberstone here is back Ward into Shield. Shield's so close right now to try and look for the move. Ward's got to be wary of this, and the fact that Shield will be looking to try and put one on, but he goes defensive here. Humberstone having to be conscious of the fact that Ward's coming in hot on the brakes, but Ward, they're not quite close enough, but it's a small luck up there from Humberstone, and as a result he goes deep to the gravel, and Jack Ward gets it done, but as he went deep himself, now you can see that Shield's come on through. Meanwhile, Shane Piggott up the inside, there's contact between the two of them, and Ward goes round and collects what is their Piggott in consequence as they make the way onto the circuit and back off of it, and well, it's a disaster for both what is their Piggott and Ward. Humberstone regains what he lost, but meanwhile, we look up to the front of the field here, and Philipp Hammer continues to break away from Cameron Willacy as they make the way up into turn number 12, and as they roar the way down right now, I think Philipp Hammer is all safe and said and done here, unless there's another mistake. Of brilliant battles up and down the field, I'll agree with you there, Medmo, particularly in the silver class. It's unfortunate the way it's unfolded, but still that's what happens with close racing at Road America. That's why it's a classic circuit in the United States, and as Hammer makes his way into the final corner, where he's had no such quandary with regards to having to fight too hard for position other than defending hard on the open lap. He's opened up the gap to 1.2 seconds. That's where it stayed, and as he goes through the rise, Philipp Hammer is your winner in round 13 of the Porsche Cup Season 5, ahead of Cameron Willacy, who comes home P2 in the gold class, ahead of Danny Hugedorf, who completes the golden overall podium, P3 for Apex Missers, and then we have a 6.5 second gap to this man, Joe Newman, P4, ahead of Ash England, who P5 overall takes the win in the silver class. Another win for the record books of the Willacy Racing driver, ahead of Tim Darracott, P6, Marcel Fritsch, P7, Nathan Foster, P8, Aaron Tressler on his debut, P2 in the silver class, P9 overall. He'll be very proud of that, given the fact it's such stiff competition, but he kept it calm and consistent, and Craig Shield completes the overall top 10, P3 in the silver class, ahead of Alistair Hatcher, Best the Rest, P11 for 8 Racing Team Cyan, and it's Darren Fellows at P12, ahead of Glenn Humberstone, P13, Shane Piggott comes to line, P14 in the end, P7 in the silver class, and as we have our last couple of drivers coming through, including Jack Ward, who we see here, and I think a bit of a despondent P15, knowing it could have been a definite podium, and I think some damage on the car right at the end after the incident between himself and Piggott, ahead of James Kersop, who comes on home P16 there, just fend off Matt Maddox to the line. Kersop 16th, Maddox 17th, all of our drivers who started finished as they cross the line there to complete round 13. But an absolute thriller of a race to kick off our day of racing, no doubt about it. And whilst we do have a 2-minute breather, we can now give you a quick recap of those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, of course. Win at round 13 and the 12-minute sprint at Road America in the Porsche Cup Season 5 as hosted by UKSimRacing here today at Road America, Wisconsin. We can see it, Philipp Hammer taking the win up by 1.2 seconds in for WS Racing Esports over Willacy Races driver of Cameron Willacy. Danny Hugedorf there completing at the top 3 for Apex Missers. Not quite on the pace of the top 2 after a bold start to try and attack Philipp Hammer into turn 1 and also in the run down towards turn number 5, but Hammer simply keeping his cool, keeping it calm and collected, and therefore forcing Hugedorf backwards towards Willacy, and as Willacy made his way on through, Hugedorf just not quite able to up the tempo, but still that P3 will go a good way to setting himself up for success in the feature, ahead of Joe Newman at P4 there for simracing Racing. Your silver winner of Ash England, P5 for Willacy Racing, another overall top 5, definitely picking up plenty of accolades is Ash England, ahead of Tim Darracott, who started from the pit lane and fought his way all the way out to P6 overall, 5th in the gold class for Effect Esports. Brilliant drive from Darracott. Marcel Fritsch, P7 for WS Racing Esports. And your reverse grid pole sitter, P8 overall in this race for the purposes of the feature race. simracing Racing's Nathan Foster, he won't be complaining too much about that. Ahead of Aaron Tressler there, P2 in the silver class, the privateer on his debut. And Craig Shield for 8 Racing Team Cyan completing the overall top 10. And with it, the silver podium P3 in class. Alistair Hatcher, best the rest there in P11 for 8 Racing Team Cyan behind his teammate. Ahead of BDM Racing's Darren Fellows. With Glenn Humberstone P13 for 8 Racing Team Purple. Ahead of sister team team, Team Red's Shane Pigott in the 27 car P14, and then Jack Ward for Willacy Racing ahead of the privateer James Kersop, who just picked Matt Maddox from BDM Racing to the post, with both drivers having a difficult start to the race but turning things around, or hoping to at least in the feature. But that was race number 1, ladies and gentlemen, and very shortly we make our way to the grid for race number 2, the round 14 feature here. When indeed we've already got the checker flag out on this interluding break session, and now our drivers will be heading back into the pit lane before going onto the grid. So as they line up once more, this is how they line up for the round 14 feature. It is Nathan Foster who takes pole position for simracing ahead of Marcel Fritsch for WS Racing Esports. Tim Darracott from Effect Esports lines up on the second row, joined by Ash England, the Willacy Racing pole sitter there in the silver class, with Joe Newman for Simran Racing and Danny Hugador for Apex Vissers line up together on the third row. Karen Willacy for Willacy Racing and Philipp Hammer for WS Racing Esports complete the top 8 on the fourth row, with Aaron Trester, the privateer, joined on the fifth row by Craig Shield, the ATT Racing Team Cyan driver. On row at number 6, we have Alistair Hatcher starting P11 for ATT Racing Team Cyan, joined by BDM Racing's Darren Fellows. And as we continue our way down the grid, Glenn Hummerstone for ATT Racing Team Purple, starting P13 on the 7th row, joined by ATT Racing Team Red Shane Pigott, ahead of Jack Ward and James Kersop. And we can see that the Willacy Racing driver joined by the privateer, and it is BDM Racing's Matt Maddox who starts last but not least, as we get ready to go racing once again, ladies and gentlemen. We are laying the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out, and away we go once again as Nathan Foster this time looks to have the strong start in the run down towards turn number 1. But can he make it count here as they head the way on down in towards the braking zone? They charge Marcel Fritsch on the outside. And it does look as though Fritsch getting a good run now as he makes his way out through the gearbox. But Nathan Foster making the car wide, as meanwhile Danny Hugador there on the offensive versus Ash England. England really trying to make the ground early as they come on down towards the braking zone. And meanwhile we can see Tam Darracott trying to keep making that ground as well as he looks around the outside, and Marcel Fritsch can't make it count at the moment. Meanwhile at the back of the group, Matt Maddox and what is there, James Kersop side by side. Jack Ward meanwhile having a slow start to his race. We'll try and understand what happened there shortly, but as Maddox here still battles with Kersop, we look up to the front of the field and we can see that Tim Darracott now with Joe Newman looking up the inside. Well, Newman starting to get a little bit aggressive early, trying to make that ground, but hot on the brakes they'll go. Marcel Fritsch up the inside and Nathan Foster there trying to protect the car. He loses the rear, catches it in time, and we can see that they part the seas to go round the stricken Porsche as they all make their way into turn number 6. Everybody survives. That's absolutely brilliant to see the control from everyone, and as Nathan Foster loses out now, he's got Danny Hugador on his inside there, pushing him down to P5, but they go too wide through 7. They stay too wide on corner exit, and as they head down into the left hand, and now who's going to back out here into the very sharp left hand right angle corner? Well, neither one of them does here, and you can see already, look at the top 3, they've already put 2 seconds clear as they make their way down into the carousel, and as they roll the way on through, Foster and Hugador not backing out. Meanwhile Karen Willacy looks up the inside here with the natural fact that you can see that Foster being pushed more and more out of the understeer, and as they creep the way out of the carousel, Foster goes onto the grass and loses out all the speed that he's gained as they make their way through the kink, and as they roll on through now, meanwhile look to Joe Newman who comes underneath our cameraman then. It looks so Marcel Fritsch going slowly. I wonder if there's been a slowdown penalty for Fritsch as Tim Darracott jumps up into P2. Meanwhile Karen Willacy now having to fend off teammate Ash England who's trying to make ground as they make their way out to Canada corner and up the hill into 13, but it's been a very close start from all of our drivers here. All 17 drivers have made it on through, albeit a couple of drivers have made some mistakes and have dropped a bit further down, but for the most part, nobody having any difficulty so far. And those who've had difficulty, they've been able to capture it, collect it, and get it back on the road. And Philipp Hammer not making any ground at the start of this lap. And well, that's a very interesting start for Philipp Hammer. We normally see him make a bit of ground early on, but instead he's actually had the ground come to him in the form of Nathan Foster as they make their way onto lap number 2. As they charge the way down, we reload the overlay there so you can see the circuit map at the top right corner of your screen, and Hammer up the inside here now starting to pick off those places. He's got to be calm and collected here as meanwhile we've got an instant for that. Danny Hugador into the barrier there, coming out of turn number 1 through 2, and it's gone horribly wrong for the Dutchman, and that car is going to be limping all the way to the pit lane, as I do believe Jack Ward has also made his way into the pit lane due to a technical issue on the car. We're not quite sure what's happened to Ward. We'll try and find out as soon as we possibly can, but I do believe that Danny Hugador may be considering a tow to the pits. In fact, we have had confirmation he has been towed to the pits due to damage after incident at turn 1. Very unfortunate for the Apex Vissers driver. As we look to leaders here, Newman ahead of Darracott and Fritsch, and well, this top three continue to hold clear of the rest of the field by 2 seconds at the moment. But meanwhile, oh goodness me, we've had something absolutely cataclysmic happen at turn number 4, and well, turn number 5 we should say, and there's been a bit of an incident, albeit off camera. We've had a huge shake up of the grid in terms of the field of drivers making the way outside the top 10, and it looks as though we've had Shane Pickett drop a long way down. We'll try and understand what's happened there very shortly as they make the way on through into turn number 8. And Glenn Humberstone at the back of this group. I think there's more to it than meets the eye as they make the way out to turn number 8 and into 9, and that does give us a breather to be able to take a look back at what exactly happened on the opening lap for a good number of drivers, including what happened to Jack Ward. So this was at the start of the race, right on board here with Jack Ward. And was he trying to launch away? A very slow start there for the Willacy Racing driver, just simply creeping off the line, and well, sounds as though there was an issue with the car and it having to lift off there. Is there a problem with his throttle pedal, just not building up any speed? But for the Willacy Racing driver, just going nowhere fast at all. And well, as we look from him, and he just crept along to what happened a little bit late on the open lap, a bit of an off track for Matt Maddox. It was a lock-up, in fact, down into turn number 5, went overly deep, then just simply steered wide and clear to avoid going into the side of any of his peers. And well, Matt Maddox there playing the safety game. And then what exactly happened to Danny Hogendorn? Was in the run through turn at number 1 on the second lap, goes a little bit wide, dips the rear left tyre, and then as he gets the power down, it's a knock to the wall for the Dutchman, and that is all she wrote with regards to his race, with regards to that incident in the fact that it just did not work out at all for him. We must return to live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, because we are getting a shake-up in the field. We won't be able to continue analysing what happened on that second lap into turn 5 at the moment. Tim Darracott has taken the lead of this race ahead of Joe Newman as he makes his way down towards turn number 5 once again. There has been a bit of a mix-up as with regards to the positions here, with Darracott clearing Newman. Marcel Fritsch also getting in the fight, and Newman looking up the inside as Darracott leaves the door open. There's a bit of contact there with the rear right quarter panel. All the way is Newman's car. I think there's a bit of front suspension to rear suspension contact, and as they make the way into turn number 6 now, well, Darracott, I think, are not expecting that move, and therefore as surprised as we were that Newman really just able to use all the space of the road and then some and make it count as they come on down towards turn number 8 right now, where you can imagine a little bit further back there's still more battling going on, and everybody having to really play that balancing game of how hard do they push early on, do they play it smart, or do they try and break away early and then pay the price with regards to the tyre life and indeed the condition of the car later on in the race, with Glenn Humberstone holding ahead of Craig Shield at the moment for what is P4 in the Civil Class, P10 overall, as they roll the way through the right-hander, and as they come on down towards turn number 11, well, I think now Nathan Foster will be hoping he can break away from the two silver drivers and make a bit further progress, as meanwhile Ash England, your silver leader, under pressure here from Philipp Hammer, has gained a bit more ground recently, now up to P6, and the gold driver there looking around the outside of England, but England will simply cover off the position here and roll his way out to Canada corner in comfort as they make the way uphill. We jump aboard the gearbox here at Ash England. You can just see how close Hammer's getting, but of course getting close is one thing, and then overtaking is a completely different story as they make the way through 14. I think if Hammer can get the hammer down here, not to pun his name, but it's just true, if he can get the throttle down, he's going to get the move into turn number 1, whereas Ash England got the car set up for straight line speed. Well, I think this is a very telling sign as they make the way onto the flat here, and Hammer getting as close as possible as he swings on through and up the inside. And well, England, I think he can huff and puff all he wants there in regards to the throttle pedal, but this is only going one way, and it is going to be Hammer up the inside as they come through turn number 1. England's going to try and fight it around the outside, but I don't think it's going to be a counter-attack that's able to be pulled off here as they make the way into turn 3. And meanwhile, in the back of the picture, that's Joe Newman who's had an off at turn number 1. The SimRacing drivers had it all go wrong for him, and we'll have to try and understand what happened very shortly. Look at the side of the car, the whole paintwork has just been completely shaved off there. There's more grey than white on the side of it. Goodness me, Newman has been in a huge moment, and well, that is all unfortunate for Newman, and that takes him out of the battle for the lead of this race at this time. But what exactly went wrong? Well, as we get the replay here, they made the way down towards turn number 1. Newman battling there with Darracott. There's contact there between Newman and Darracott, and Newman being sent to the barrier. And well, I don't think Newman expected anything like that. And Darracott, I think, will plead that it was an innocent mistake. And to be fair, when it goes wrong, it is an innocent mistake normally for Darracott, and indeed for any of our drivers here, given the level of professionalism they've all shown, but definitely not the way Newman expected the race to go. As we return it to live pictures here, and well, Newman right now, trying to just bring on home the car if he can. I wonder if there might be a visit to the pits there, given the fact that left-hand side of the car, and you can actually see where the front left tyre is crabbing slightly. That is where the tyre is at a greater angle than you'd normally expect it to be. It's running more camber on it in terms of tilt on the tyre compared to what you would expect in a racing car. And that's normally due to damage to the suspension. And I think Newman may be considering a visit to the pits in the near future, because that Porsche is definitely not carrying speed through right-hand corners where the left tyres take the punishment the most. But as we look from Newman to a little bit further up the road to Marcel Fritsch, well, right now the WS-Racing eSports driver continuing on in second place, but I think there will be the question of how long it's going to be before Cameron Willacy starts to try and put the pressure on with regards to making that P2 ground. And also keep in mind, we do have Philipp Hammer. He is inching closer and closer lap after lap. Well, in fact, when I say inching, well, right now he is taking yards out of his opponents. Last lap from Philipp Hammer, fastest lap of the race at 209.206. The best part of 3/10 faster than anybody else ahead of him as they make their way down towards turn 3 once again. And Cameron Willacy now, I think, cognizant of the fact that he does have Hammer inching closer, and as they make their way out of turn 3 and up towards 5, Willacy will want to get this move done as soon as possible. But of course, for Marcel Fritsch, the aim of the game here will be to try and make it a double podium for WS Racing Esports, something they've yet to be able to do in the feature this season, and will therefore Fritsch will do everything he can to defend versus Cameron Willacy, as Willacy looks to move up the inside. Can't quite find it at the moment as they come through turn number 5, but still they've got more opportunities. And with only 10 minutes of this race complete by the time they clear the carousel, you can imagine that for a lot of the drivers, they are now starting to enter that tyre preservation and car management phase, for the simple reason that if they push too hard now, then they really will not have the rubber to expend later on in the race. They'll find the car really starts to collapse in that overall pace consideration. But as they come through turn 8, you can see that Hammer is getting much closer in the run through the middle section of the circuit. Now up to what is a margin there of a second off of Cameron Willacy, and I suspect by the end of this lap that gap may come down to about half a second, given the fact that Marcel Fritsch right now, I think, trying to play a bit of defensive gunning work here with regards to trying to keep Willacy behind, and with it bring Hammer into the fold, so that way the two WS Racing Esports drivers can try and break away early on. Albeit he won't be breaking away if he breaks off the circuit like that. Fritsch runs wide, and as a result, Cameron Willacy comes on through there, given a free opportunity as Marcel Fritsch making a mistake into the King. And well, the King has caught out a number of drives so far today, and Fritsch another one who can add his name to that list as he gets a bit of snap oversteer on power coming out to Canada corner, and that'll be where the grass on the tyre has just taken away that grip that he needs to be able to get the throttle down as comfortably. But meanwhile, as they make their way into turn 14, we look to Matt Maddox, who has recently been passed by Joe Newman. Newman now starting to make his way back up through the order, albeit Joe Newman's target in terms of gold class drivers, including Nathan Foster, well, they are over 30 seconds up the road as a minimum. So I think right now for Maddox it is going to be, well, let's follow Newman, and for Newman it's all about damage limitation, see what place he can pick up. As meanwhile we can see here Philipp Hammer jumps ahead of Marcel Fritsch. They make the swap in the run to turn 1, and right now WS Racing Esports running P3, P4. Their target will be to try and make it a 1-2, as is any expectation for any team running this high up in the order. But as minimum they want both drivers on the podium, and Hammer will be the one who tries to take the fight to Cameron Willacy in due course. Keep in mind, of course, that it was Hammer and Willacy who really led the field in the sprint race and set the pace over the course of the 12 minutes. As they make their way down towards turn 5 once again, we're looking a little bit further down the order. Ash England, meanwhile, in P5 in a comfortable position here with regards to leading at the silver class. Although I say that, looking behind it, Aaron Tressler, in fact, moving closer over the last couple of laps. The gap now down to what is there only at just over a second, 1.1 seconds to be a bit more precise. And I think the number 11 driver here is definitely starting to feel the flow and rhythm with regards to the Road America circuit. Of course, we do have to keep in mind that he may be pushing a bit harder now, and he'll be having to back off slightly towards the end of the race. But I think for Tressler, it's definitely all coming together here potentially with regards to a brilliant run to the podium in the sprint race, and now in his second race he's again looking at a run to the podium. Could he even potentially be contesting the winning class? And that'd be a message being sent to Ash England very late on in the season, which is that right now you may have somebody on the grid who is not able to beat you in the championship this season, but you definitely have a rival for those wins, if not those podiums as a minimum. And Tressler keeping his eye on the game in front of him, as meanwhile just behind him we see Darren Fellows here, the BDM Racing driver in the 404 machine. Well, we're looking to hunt down at Craig Schill. The gap 2.5 seconds, they make the way through the King. But it does look as though Craig Schill opened up that gap by a couple of attempts, if not half a second a lap at the current rate of knots. with the comparison being a 2:10.8 for Craig Shield on the previous lap. Darren Fellows a 2:11.5. Sizable margin there of 7 tenths between the two of them. I think for Fellows, he'll be worried about the fact that Shane Piggott is taking a similar gap down with regards to the advantage that Fellows has over Piggott. The gap currently standing at 4.4 seconds, but it is coming down at a fast rate of knots. As meanwhile, we look to Alistair Hatcher, who has Nathan Foster behind him here. The silver driver, P3 in the silver class, trying to hold on to P7 overall. Nathan Foster getting very close here, looking up the inside into turn one. I don't think Hatcher's going to fight it too hard. The 88 Racing Team sign driver just simply keeping it tucked on the outside there on the racing line, and Nathan Foster comes on through to take the position as they make the way down the hill towards turn number 3. But as they head on through, now can Nathan Foster hunt down Marcel Fritsch, who is the best part of 9 seconds up the road from him? We all reckon he can. I think for Nathan Foster, he's just got to take it one step at a time, and given the fact running quite far up the order early on, and just an innocent mistake or two cost him very dearly at that as he makes his way down towards turn number 5. But as we look from him to Cameron Willacy, we can see that Philipp Hammer has closed up here as they make their way out of turn 6 into 7. And now what are we going through the mind of Cameron Willacy, I hear you ask at this point? Well, of course, with Hammer closing up behind, Willacy will be looking to try and dig his fangs into that P2 position. Because really in the championship right now, it is Hammer's to win with regards to the advantage he has accrued for himself, and Cameron Willacy have been one of the major contenders to hunt him down. Also on that list is Lee Holmes and Tim Darracott. I think Willacy may play the game of thinking that given the fact he beat Darracott by a sizable margin in the sprint race, if he loses one place to Darracott, albeit it's a sizable amount of points, it's not as much damage in terms of losing points to Darracott, who chases him in the championship, versus the fact that if Willacy can hold off Hammer, he will start to gain a bit more ground on Hammer in the championship here today, and that could prove pivotal if we do see a rare round or round or two whereby Hammer potentially is not on the form and therefore is booked back into the fold for the season finale. As we say though, it is looking as though it is Hammer's championship to really take, and as things were to finish today, he would almost practically have one hand on the championship ground going into our next 2 rounds in Spain in a week's time. But Willacy right now will do everything he can to try and put down his marker and make sure that it's not Philipp Hammer's win in this race. In terms of he'll want to take the position off him and hold on to that second place at minimum. As they cross the timeline, you can see Hammer there at 2:08.860, Willacy at 2:09.216, and this just goes to show you Hammer is really just a step above the field in terms of the pace. As they make the way in towards the next corner, the challenge will be here for Hammer. He's closed up rapidly, but can he find a way on through? And we'll see immediately coming off the turn 3 and keeping the car off the racing line initially. Normally I try to bring the car over to the right quite rapidly to get the racing line all the way down towards turn number 5. You can see their Hammer within 2 tenths, going in very gradually. And this is very telling as well in terms of the amount of wing that they're running on the cars, with regards to the fact that Hammer gets good launches off the corners, but not quite close as much as perhaps we expected on the straights. And therefore I think Cameron Willacy has gone for a bit more of a top speed centric setup on the car, whereas they make the way through this middle section. This is where you'll see Hammer really starts to gain. He's got greater rotation and stability in the car, but in return, if he doesn't get an absolute pinpoint precise run out of the carousel and it's within say 2.5 tenths on the exit of turn 10, then Willacy can just simply keep his head down and keep the throttle in and decide, right, there's no way Hammer's going to pass me. I've just got to simply be wary of the fact he may see an opening on the inside and I've got to cover it off. But that's the contrast of the two drivers. We saw this, to be fair, at Detroit last week. We saw how Philipp Hammer had all the speed through the corners, but as soon as it came to a long straight, the car just did not have the top end. But meanwhile, coming out of the kink, it's Cameron Willacy who makes a mistake there in similar fashion to Marcel Fritsch. Only a few laps to go. Hammer's up the inside. Willacy tries to come through, but he can't do anything to counter-attack this, and the Hammer simply makes it count, opens up the corner as much for himself and makes sure that he gives Willacy just enough space to make the corner. And I think that's the message there from Philipp Hammer to Cameron Willacy is, nice try, but this is my P2 and now my win to take as they make the way into turn 14. But as they come out of the final corner and make their way into the second half of this race, of course now Philipp Hammer has to find his way past this man, the number 18 driver from Effect Esports, to Tim Darracott. And the one thing we know and love about Tim Darracott is he does not give up. If he finds himself under pressure, it only pushes him to push harder. And as they make their way into turn 1, well, right now, Philipp Hammer still with Cameron Willacy trying to make a comeback here as they come through 1 into 3. And that's the sign of that top speed differential we're referring to. But meanwhile, heading into turn 1 as well, we see Nathan Foster up the inside of Aaron Tressler here as the gold P5 in class driver makes the way up into P6 overall. Aaron Tressler P2 in the silver class, doesn't fight it too hard, aware of the fact he's not racing with Nathan Foster 4 points. It's only for overall track position, which is a little bit of pride on the line potentially, but again, points weigh up more over pride, because if you exit the championship running in the top 5, well, that pride goes with you all the way into the next season, whereas you just take the pride from the day when you beat another class driver on circuit in a given race. But as they make their way down towards turn 5, now you can see Nathan Foster already breaking away, and I think he's feeling quite comfortable with regards to the advantage he's now starting to carve out in his hunt after Ash England, who is 4 seconds up the road, and these two on a similar pace as we look to Ash England make his way into turn 7. Now coming on through at the right-hander into left-hander at turn number 8 very shortly. We have recently had an incident with Glenn Humberstone, and we take a look back at what exactly happened to the ATT Racing driver. Well, this is in the run from the kink into Canada corner, coming on to the brakes here, and well, we can see that the car looking hooked up, and in the end just the rear left tyre going on to the gravel, causing the car to go around, and with it a knock to the tyre barrier, and Glenn Humberstone, well, he'll be kicking himself for that mistake as he reversed into the barrier as well, so getting a bit of damage on both the front and the rear of the car there, and will hopefully not too much damage to Bissett and give him woes with regards to the remainder of the racing as we return to your live pictures. And we can see now as England leaves the silver class with Tressler in P2, and Alistair Hatcher in P3, and a lonely P3 in the silver class, P8 overall, as he makes his way down towards Canada corner once again. But the ATT Racing Team Science driver has no pressure on him at the moment, as Craig Shield continues to fall back little by little, losing 4 attempts on that previous lap, and Shield in P4 in the silver class, P9 overall. The Team Science ATT Racing driver here, I think, just focusing on consolidating this position with Shane Pigott closing that gap down, and now within 3.5 seconds, if not closer, as they head towards the end of this lap with 10 minutes still on the clock. But as they make their way through the final corners, now we're in that final 10 minutes, this is where we start to see that tempo shift once again. Because we look to our leader here of Tim Darracott as he comes out of turn 3 and makes his way down towards turn number 5. We have the question now that's going to be revealed in terms of answers. Who's been preserving the tyres and who's pushed them a little bit harder on the opening laps? Now in terms of lap times, Philipp Hammer previous lap at 208.87, Tim Darracott at 209.34, Cameron Willacy at 209.67. I think, as well as the pace that Philipp Hammer has over his rivals by default, there has been a bit of tyre conservation work put in by Philipp Hammer, particularly in the first 10 minutes. Well, we have seen him, to be fair. We saw it at Detroit, and we also saw it in the preceding rounds, where Hammer just taking his time in the first couple of laps to really get the car in the zone and then start to make the ground. Of course, it hasn't always worked out. At the Hockenheim ring, we saw that slow start then meant he really had to fight his way through the field in the final 10 minutes, and he had to take 7 places in 10 minutes, or in other words, what you could say is it was 1.5 places a lap effectively in Germany. But right now, Tim Darracott with that building pressure, and well, we have seen a consistent run from Darracott. Of course, that nudge between himself and what was the simracing driver of Joe Newman would have disrupted and upset his run of the race here. But I think right now he'll put that aside and think whatever will be in the shooting room after today's racing, and he'll just want to bring home the win on circuit as a minimum as they make their way into Canada corner once again. And well, Cameron Willacy not far out of this battle, and of course that's the one thing that Darracott can try to do. If he feels as though he can battle Hammer hard enough, he may just be able to force Hammer backwards towards Willacy, and the number 43 driver may be able to stick his nose in and turn it into a battle for P2 once again, and give Darracott by default the breathing room to break away. But as they make their way out of the final corner, meanwhile we look back to Marcel Fritsch, who falls a little bit further back, 5.5 seconds away from the top 3. I think for Marcel Fritsch right now, the Austrian driver, we're looking to consolidate his P4 unless there is any last lap theatrics from the top 3. But as he heads across the timeline with Ash England not letting him go, 2 seconds is the gap. A new fastest lap in the race from Philipp Hammer now on what is a 208.83. And Hammer definitely delivering those laps time and time again. The man is not showing any signs of slowing down, as meanwhile we look to Joe Newman here, who's made his way past Glenn Humberstone. Oh, goodness me, and what on earth has happened to Glenn Humberstone? That's Canada corner, and he's gone round again there at the same corner as on the previous lap. Well, the 212 driver definitely not on the run he's wanted. We've got in the pits Matt Maddox as well, and we have had the premature retirement of Danny Hugendorn, and I believe the issue on Jack Ward's car has been resolved. Off the start line, of course, we saw that very slow start for Jack Ward. Not sure what's happened, but Glenn Humberstone going overly deep there at turn number 14. And I think we may see him just have to limp home in this race. But looking back from the rear of the field to the front of the field, we see Tim Darracott here holding on to lead at the moment. But Philipp Hammer gets close as they make their way down to turn 8, and we jump aboard. Now coming out of 8 into 9 and 10, as he gets close here, Hammer as well, we're now starting to be doing a little bit of initial analysis, looking at where Darracott may be weaker than him and where he can potentially set up that move. And as they make their way on the carousel, interestingly there, Darracott going a bit deep out of 9, bringing it back together to 10, but not being punished. I think Hammer deciding not to really push his luck there as they made their way out to the King and down towards Canada corner. The gap stands at half a second at the moment, but Darracott, we still got at least after this lap 3 more laps to run in order to try and bring home that win. I think Hammer for this lap is just simply teeing up. Okay, this is where I might be able to make the move, and the next 3 laps will see him start to really apply that pressure, breathing down the neck of Darracott, and then go for the ultimate move. Of course, he'll want to do it sooner rather than later. He won't want this to go down to a final lap showdown, so that way he has the opportunity to break away before we get onto that final lap. But as Hammer builds up the speed once more, hitting the rev limiter there very briefly in fact, but just about getting away with it as he makes his way into turn number 1 very shortly up into top gear. We can see the speed he's gaining. Both drivers running a similar amount of rear wing on the car. The gap comes down from 4 tenths down to 2 tenths into the braking zone for 1, and now this goes dirty. It does start to have an impact on that front end when you're running a lot of downforce in the car, because that dirty air really, it does feel painful because you rely so much on the aerodynamics of the car to give you that stability, whereas other drivers such as Cameron Willacy, they haven't got too much rear wing by default, and therefore they're not as confounded by the dirty air. But as the drivers make their way down for the King to a 4, gap stands at 2 tenths. Darracott puts it in the middle of the road. He knows Hammer might be considering it here. The effective sports driver defends on the inside. Hammer there goes to the outside, banks it off. He's trying to tease out a mistake from Darracott. Darracott shows no signs of making one, however, as they come out of turn 5, up the hill towards 6 they go, into the blind summit, onto the brakes here. Hammer again getting close. A little bit of understeer creeping in there as he gets a bit too close for comfort, but as he carries the speed back on into turn number 7, Darracott stays alive for now, but the battle is definitely now starting to build up. The kettle is boiling, and it won't be long before it boils over, and the question is who will be at the foreground of this pair when they come to that checkered flag. 5 minutes remain, and what's 5 minutes remain for them, it is also 5 minutes for our drivers behind, and Shane Piggott and Craig Shield have exchanged places recently, and I believe that Craig Shield may have just had a bit of a poor run out of turn 3. We take a look back. As they made the way out of turn 3, you can see here Shane Piggott getting a really nice run off the corner. Meanwhile, as we called it, Craig Shield just going a little bit deep by comparison, and a mistake proving costly there, as now Shane Piggott moves up into P4 in the silver class, P9 overall. But as we return to the live pictures here, we can see the iRacing Team Cyan and Team Red drivers still close together, showing no signs of abating in their battle as they roll the way down for the carousel. Craig Shield, in fact, drifting there into turn number 9. I think those rear tyres now starting to feel a bit of pain with regards to the wear that's gone through them, and now for I think Shield, he needs to just simply tease out and understand where is that tyre wear going to cost him a lap time and not push it too hard. So if he push it too hard over the next couple of laps, he may find himself off onto the grass, and that P5 in class may be denied from him. As we look back to leaders here, 2 more laps remaining, including the one they've gone on to. They're going to be completing a grand total of 14 laps here under race conditions in the feature. Darracott leads still, but with 3.5 tenths of a gap, and the gap right now is not expanding, it is staying close and personal as they head down into turn 3. Cameron Willacy at still 1.2 seconds off this battle. He has got a little bit closer as Cameron Willacy, but I think right now he is relying on the drivers in front of him to battle one another hard, as meanwhile we look to Ash England here, who's back up to P4 overall, making his way past Marcel Frisch, who I believe has made a brief error in the run out of turn 1. But we look back to lead here, and Darracott home to defend again. We saw this on the previous lap, and it's the exact same scenario, the exact same outcome, but this time Darracott not able to get the breakaway in the run up towards turn number 6. Then we can see Hammer staying very close there, and Hammer really setting up that cutback run out to turn 5 each time now, almost signaling. I think he might even trying to condition Darracott into thinking that the move's going from turn 5 into 6. And this is the thing as well, when you've got time, you can really start to get into the head of the driver in front of you, making them wonder, where are you going to make the move? But of course, every lap that you burn down, that does mean that you are taking away time to make the move instead. Getting in the mind of your opponent is one thing, but then making that move on the final lap, that is where it all comes down. And if you make one mistake there, you can find all that hard work is for nothing. And Cameron Willacy now within 7.5 tenths of this battle, with the two of them fighting through turn number 5. It's definitely cost them half a second, and Willacy there waiting in the wings to try and take the lead for himself, albeit again, we reckon it won't be on pace that it will take the lead. If it's going to happen, it will be through capitalising. But that's not to besmirch the amount of pace he's brought to the table here. But you can just see out of the corners a little wobble there for Cameron Willacy coming out of Canada corner. The car just not quite able to carry as much speed as it once did. As Mills a mistake there for Hammer, runs a little bit wide out of 13. Doesn't cost him too dearly, as we hear that Aaron Tress and Nathan Foster have exchanged places, P6 overall. But as they make the way onto the start finish straight, it's now the run onto the final lap here. It's Tim Darracott who leads by 2.5 tenths, but Philipp Hammer is on the charge. He wants to take the lead. He wants to make it 2 out of 2. And as they head into turn number 1, Cameron Willacy with the fastest lap of the race of 28.832. Meanwhile, Hammer looks up the inside. Darracott turns on in, but he finds the iRacing esports driver there, and Hammer's gone for it early. And as they head on down towards turn number 3, has he gone for it too soon? As Darracott battles on the way outside here, they make it too wide, but he backs off. Meanwhile, Cameron Willacy comes in close behind. He can't quite make the move, but now Darracott has to keep in mind he's between a rock and a hard place. He's of course got the charging Hammer in front of him, and meanwhile he's got the offender of Willacy right now, who's trying to make that P2. And as they make the way down towards turn number 5, I think Darracott's potential run back at his rival for the lead of this race has gone away, given the fact he didn't quite get close up. And it's a lockout there from Tim Darracott into turn 5. He goes deep, and as a result, Cameron Willacy comes up into P2. Philipp Hammer leads the ways, and only half a lap to go now. 1 minute left on the clock as they make the way out of turn 6 into 7. And I think this may just be where things finish, unless there's a mistake from anyone. Because right now, Hammer with clear track to himself, I think he'll be thinking about just simply over that gap back up to 1 second and keeping it there all the way to the finish line. But Cameron Willacy has been saving something up in last reserve as they come down through the carousel. All the three drivers then quick succession. Tim Darracott again going a little bit deep under braking. I think the Effect Esports driver has just simply lost the touch of the car, and as he runs wide out of turn number 10. And for Darracott, I think it's a P3 that he just needs to bring on home. But meanwhile, looking a little bit further back, we can tell you that right now Craig Shield has recently been passed by Darren Fellows, and in fact an off track at the start of this lap, and Darren Fellows has moved up to P4, P9 overall. And well, for Darren Fellows in the silver class, it is really unfolding at a rapid rate of knots in his favour. But meanwhile, as we look from them back up to your leaders, well, Hammer makes his way into the final corner, run his way through the right hander here. He's got to keep it cool. It's only one straightaway now between himself and the winner of this race, and well, he ran away with it in the sprint. He's had to work hard for it and make his moves count in the feature, but it's 2 out of 2 in rounds 13 and 14 for Philipp Hammer as he takes the win for WS Racing Esports overall and in the gold class in the feature at Road America, ahead of Cameron Willacy. P2 there for Willacy Racing, and then Tim Darracott. It was unfortunate in the sprint, but he bounced back, and in this race he's finished on the podium there for Effect Esports, ahead of Ash Ingram, who comes on home P4 there for Willacy Racing, your silver winner, making it 2 out of 2 once again here today. Marcel Fritsch P5, and then we do have Aaron Tressler, who makes it another second place, albeit sliding his way across the grass to the finish. The privateer definitely having a great debut. 2 podiums back to back ahead of Nathan Foster P7, and then we can see Alistair Hatcher complete the podium for the silver class behind the SimRacing driver, the ATX Racing Team Sign driver with a P8 overall, ahead of Darren Fellows of BDM Racing, who jumped up into P4 in the silver class right at the end, ahead of Craig Shield, who completes the top 10 overall, P5 in the silver class there for ATX Racing Team Cyan, and then best the rest Joe Newman for SimRacing Racing in a day to forget forget for the SimRacing outfit, Joe Newman, of course, at that unfortunate moment to turn 1, where he was given a bit of a knock towards the barrier, and then James Kersop crossing the line there, P12, ahead of Glenn Humberstone, who finishes P13, as the 88 Tip Racing Team Purple Drive comes home behind the privateer, and then the last half finishers on the lead lap will soon be Shane Piggott for 88 Tip Racing Team Red, as he gradually makes his way into Canada Corner. Of course, a mistake in the late stage of this race cost him very dear, but still staying in it to win it all the way to the finish. But as he makes his way up towards turn number 14, rolling on through into the braking zone here for Piggott. It's not been a venue that's been kind to him, but he's still got 2 more venues to go and still plenty more rivalry time to enjoy with his 88 Tip Racing sister teammates, also his own teammate, and also the other drivers in his class as he comes on through to take P14, the last place to finish on the lead lap overall, and what is P8 in the silver class. We, of course, had our retirees of Jack Ward, Matt Maddox, and Danny Hugendorn. And, well, as we see there, our driver coming on through it, and Cameron Willacy making his way back round to the pit lane. Deciding to do a full cool-down lap here, just to simply get the car back down to temperature, cool it on down, and indeed reflecting what has been another strong day for the Willacy racing driver there in the gold class, which will definitely cement his run for P2 in the gold championship and making the #1 contender to chase down Philipp Hammer. We take a look to the scenic view then, ladies and gentlemen, and take you through those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. So after 30 minutes of racing in the round 14 feature at Road America today in the UKSimRacing Porsche Cup Season 5, Philipp Hammer making it 2 wins out of 2 here in the Wisconsin State by 7/10 of a second in the end over Cameron Willacy. Tim Darracott P3 there, and a valiant effort to try and take the win, but it was a lock-up in the end that cost him dearly in the run for P2 after being passed by Hammer at the start of the final lap. But Darracott will definitely know that he's got the momentum to take the fight for podiums, if not the win. And then Ash England making it 2 out of 2 in terms of wins in the silver class there. P4 for Willacy Racing, 11.5 seconds behind the leader, but at the same time clearing at Marcel Fritsch right towards the finish. Marcel Fritsch finishing P5 there ahead of Aaron Trester, who makes it another podium, a second place in the silver class in the feature, ahead of Nathan Foster, and then Alistair Hatcher completing the top 3 at the silver podium, if you will, ahead of Darren Fellows and Craig Shield to complete the top 10. Joe Newman at P11, best of the rest there for SimRacing, ahead of James Kersop, with Glenn Humberstone and Shane Piggott completing our drives, who finished on the lead lap down to P14, and then Jack Ward with retirement 2 laps on the end for Willacy Racing after that dismal start where he just seems as though he found himself with a car that didn't want to deploy the throttle at all. And then Matt Maddox P at 16 for BDM Racing there, retiring 6 laps on the finish, and I do believe that will be classified as a finish because he did complete over 50% of the race distance. And Danny Hugendorn there, the Apex Missers driver, with that early retirement, and unfortunately only turning 2 laps come his retirement. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our rundown of the results. And now, with the racing concluded, it is time for us to get ready with our post-round interviews. Of course, our drivers have had a stellar day under the sun and cloud of the Wisconsin State here at Road America. But as they now cool off, what are their thoughts on the racing they had today? Indeed, can we gain any insights as to what is to come in the final 2 venues we're to visit? Well, don't go anywhere. We'll be back in approximately 10 minutes for our post-round interviews. You won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. And today we've only got one volunteer for interview, and that is the ATX Tech Racing team sign driver of Craig Schill in the number 82 car from the silver class. And I think it's understandable, a lot of our drivers have really been put through their paces today. Road America is also a major stamina drain when it comes to road racing, given the fact that the course is very unrelenting with its combination of corners and straights, and therefore I think many are deciding to take a break. But Craig has offered us his time, and as he does get ready to join us, it'll be interesting to hear his perspective in the fact finishing P10 overall in both races, but a P3 in the first race and a P5 in the second race. Interesting contrast of how much that P10 overall was worth in terms of placement, and that goes to show you how the silver class really came through as the feature went on. But as we do ask Craig to join us now in at the interview room, he'll be jumping into our Discord voice chat very shortly. It'll also be interesting to hear his perspective on the battles between himself and his teammates as he joins us now. Craig, it looked tough out there. Road America is a circuit that's not known for being kind to driver and car. But in the end, P10 overall in both races, a third place in class in the sprint and a fifth in the feature. A positive night today, or was there a bit more out there, do you think?
If I'm honest, I had more out there. Doing the officials, I had a lot more pace than what I had tonight, but it wasn't meant to be. So I'll just take what I can get at the end of the day.
Oh, indeed, and sometimes you have to take the hand you're dealt with regards to how things play on out. And well, speaking about perhaps a bit more being out there today, let's start off with qualifying. We saw in the qualifying session a good performance from yourself, placing in the end what was right at the back of the grid, given the fact, and I apologise for my sarcasm a little bit there, but it looks like the laps was coming on through, but you just couldn't quite get one that was a valid lap in the end. What happened in qualifying?
It was just you put a wheel off and the grass just sucks you in, and it was literally by millimeters in some respects. I was getting the X's and it just ran out of time. Just didn't have enough time to put a decent one in.
Well, running out of the time, of course, we saw that with the 8-minute qualifying session, only 2 fast laps available. Was that always something that was on your mind going into qualifying, that there wasn't really that time available?
You've got to do your prep lap, your out lap's got to be a decent one. If you cut the tires and you go too fast on your out lap, it just messes it up. I was tinkering around with setups just before I started qualifying and working out the fuel for it, and that ate into time. It's qualifying and me just don't get on every time.
But conversely, whilst you may not have got along with qualifying in the race, things definitely went your way early on. A good start for yourself, and you started to pick up places, despite the fact it was a relatively calm couple of opening laps up and down the field.
Yeah, I decided that I was going to take the first lap, as I always do, a bit gentle, and I got an okay start, not as good as I have done before. And it was just a case of first lap, get round, sort yourself out, and a few people made mistakes, and I got a little bit confident on a few overtakes that I did. Wasn't willing to give up the places, and just held it. And yeah, it worked out quite well. I got 10th, so I was quite happy with that.
Or indeed 10th, and with it 3rd place in class, another podium to add to the bank account that you've opened up over the course of this season, a mixture of podiums and top 5s. And well, in the sprint, we do have to ask, it was only a 12-minute race, but given the track temperature was pushing upwards towards 40 degrees centigrade at a good number of points, could you really feel it, even with just the 12-minute race, how much drain and wear was being put through the tyres and the brakes?
Yeah, it's funny, I said to the rest of the team, I don't know what, because I've been using the same setup for the official open sessions, and that's where I've been getting the speed from, and it's a couple of degrees cooler in the officials. And I did notice that the setup just felt slow, like it didn't feel right. So I tried to tinker with it just to see if I could bring it back, but the temperature was definitely affecting it.
With the heat of the circuit, of course, then going from a race that was 12 minutes in length to 2.5 times that, did that change the way you were to approach the feature?
Yeah, I was trying to take it easy and save the tyres, but unfortunately I got chasing after my teammate, and I was taking a couple of tenths out of him, and I was like, I'm going to get him in a minute, and then I ended up shooting myself in the foot and literally melting my tyres to the point where the last couple of laps, it was tough to get the thing to even turn in. It wanted to just go straight all the time. Obviously, I had that little incident in the feature race with Shane, which I locked up and caught a brake and just tapped him. And he was catching me at one point, and I was like, right, if he gets close enough, I'm just going to let him have the place back, because obviously I took it off him. And it turns out that he underfilled his car, so he had to dive in the pits anyway. And then Fellows was on me. I just couldn't keep. I was about 2 seconds a lap slower towards the end of the race than what I was at the start, just because I cooked the tyres.
Oh goodness, in fact we've just seen on the broadcast in the background the moment between yourself and Shane Pigott with that little tap, and it does look to be an innocent tap, to be fair. One of those things that does happen, but after that tap, of course, a little bit of damage on the front of the car. And were you feeling that combination of overcooking the tyres plus also the damage to the front aero was holding you back perhaps on the straights?
Yeah, definitely down the first straight. I noticed that I wasn't reaching like the top end going into turn one, and I was losing a couple of tenths just on that first straight. So I did have an inkling that I had some form of damage, but it was manageable. It was more the tyres gone. Once the tyres had gone towards the end of the race, it was just a case of survival. Keep it on the track and pick up whatever points I could get.
Oh, indeed, and the name of the game being survival. And we saw not just yourself, but also some of your other teammates as well from ATIP Tech Racing struggling out there. I think for everybody, and do correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're all glad to have cleared Road America, because it looked tough. And well, Glenn in particular having a couple of nasty moments at Canada Corner right at the end of the race.
Yeah, I wish I could broadcast the Discord chat, because we knew what he'd done, because he did it in the same corner 3 times and it was exactly the same each time. He just put a back wheel on the gravel and it just spat him round. I think the only one that was having a good race this time round was Ali, because I couldn't catch him, which is going to make the last couple of rounds easy, because he's now behind me in the championship. And we've been in this position before many times where we've been fighting for positions in championships. Yeah, should be an interesting last couple of rounds.
Oh, indeed. Well, speaking of that rivalry between yourself and your teammate Alistair Hatcher, the gap now between you two provisionally standing at 9 seconds, based on the updated, it's not 9 seconds, 9 points, I should say, before we get any stewards' inquiries affecting the results at all. But with you two very closely matched on points, and also Jack Ward currently only sitting a further 9 points ahead of yourself, surely P2 in the championship's got to be on the cards if the stars align.
If the stars align and I can keep up with Jack, that'd be a good thing. If I can suddenly find some pace in the last 2 rounds, yeah, I'm looking at it. I'm definitely looking at P2, and I dare say Ali's looking at P3 if he's honest, because I think he'd like to finish ahead of me. But we'll see how it goes. I'm not going to do anything silly. If he's faster than me, I'll let him go. I'll fight him for as long as I can, but I'm not going to wreck anyone's championship just for a bit of team rivalry, as much as it looked really good on the stream.
Oh, indeed, and keeping in mind as well that you only hold a 20-point advantage over Glenn Humberstone, who's in P6, and Shane Pigott's in the mix as well, only 5 points ahead of Glenn, I should say. It must be getting quite testy and interesting down in the Discord for ATIP Tech Racing. You must all be thinking about how to get an edge over one another.
Yeah, it's a good rivalry. It's a lot of fun, and we do tend to talk to each other and let each other know where we are, and like if someone is faster, I'll say, look, take me over, go on the left hand side in the next corner. I won't fight it. But then every now and then one of us will get stubborn, normally me, and I just won't let a place go. And hopefully we won't end up in an 88 tech pileup, which has happened.
Well, fingers crossed. We wouldn't want to see that never. We want to see it the cleanest possible racing. And, well, to be fair, you guys have definitely delivered. We only need to think back to the Hockenheim ring, where we definitely saw the free wide between yourself and two of your teammates in the run into the split scare hairpin. And more of that, well, I think all of our audience would love to tune into over the final 2 rounds. Oh, sorry, the final 4 rounds, I should say, but the final 2 venues. Speaking of our final 2 venues, we head to Spain for the circuit to Barcelona, Catalonia in a week's time. How are you feeling for the Spanish circuit? That's a bit of a Marmite circuit. Do you love it or do you hate it?
I'm kind of sat on the fence with it. If I'm completely honest, I've had some good races in F3s around there, and I've had some absolutely shocking races. I've done 1 official so far, which was last night, and I need a little bit of practice. I'm a little bit off of where I think I should be regarding pace. It will be, I think it's all going to be decided going into the first corner, because if I get that one, if I can nail that one, I'll be all right, and we'll just see how we can go.
Well, it's definitely going to be interesting. Another interesting conundrum in the works. I do have to ask, we've seen the arrival today on the scene of Aaron Tressler in the silver class. He's picked up P2 in both races. Your thoughts on the newcomer?
He's definitely got some pace. I was catching him in the sprint, and I thinking about having a move on him. But he's definitely got some skills. Definitely be one to watch next season. But yeah, he's definitely a good racer from what I've seen so far. Clean, very clean.
Oh, indeed. And coming back to yourself, Craig, of course, we do look forward to seeing how you get on in Spain in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yourself again for doing another great job. The team, because we always have a really good laugh, like I say every time. A work colleague that's started, he started watching me now, so I'll give a shout out to him. And yeah, anyone else that knows me that's watching.
Well, Craig, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you in the interview room as always. Great to hear from yourself and, well, your perspective on the racing today. Definitely aligning what we seem to observe out there. But it's all going to come down to fine margins over the next 4 rounds, and may the fortunes be forever in your favour, as they say. But until then, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the tarmac in a week's time.
Cheers.
So hearing there from Craig Schill, our silver driver for ATEC Racing, a team sign in the number 82 car, and some interesting insights there with regards to firstly the tyre degradation situation, even in the sprint, the fact over the 12 minutes with such a high track temperature in the region of the 40 degrees centigrade, feeling the pain on the tyres and the pace just not being there in the car, but also going into the feature race, we saw that little bit of contact between himself and Shane Piggott, which sent Shane on around, unfortunate, but in the end they settled their differences and all is okay. And also we heard the fault there with regards to the arrival of Aaron Tressler. Definitely one to watch out for future seasons and definitely making an early mark. But in terms of the ATEC Racing team rivalry, of course, running from Craig through to what is his teammate all the way down in P6. I do believe his teammate, of course, being Glenn Humberstone, albeit from the sister team of ATEC Racing Team Purple. Only 20 points between them, and in between them, the pair of Alistair Hatcher and Shane Piggott. It's going to be an interesting rivalry, but at the same time, they're all itching to try and take the fight to Jack Ward, who is only 9 points up the road. And of course, Ward's mixed fortunes continue to beset him, and well, if those mixed fortunes continue, could we potentially see an ATEC Racing driver be the runner-up, given that Ash England now sits at 195 points, and so long as he gets 2 good results on the board, next time out the championship will have gone his way and he'll be crowned a pair of rounds early or a venue early. It's all interesting stuff, and well, for ATEC Racing Team Zion, the camaraderie down in the pit lane is absolutely top notch as always, and with it that does lead to some fantastic racing between them. But as we now look from our circuit replay back to our interviewee list, you've heard today from our one and only interviewee of Craig Schill for ATEC Racing Team Zion in the number 82 silver car, and well, we'll hopefully be hearing from a few more of our drivers next pair of rounds in a week's time. But with that, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community in terms of the series we run and what we also stand for outside of the world of sim racing and all in between, And then you can, of course, firstly head to our official website, which you saw pop up on screen earlier on in today's broadcast, and that is UKSimRacing.co.uk. Alternatively, you can go to our official UK Sim Racing Twitter to find out all the latest news and information, and also about how our esports racing teams are doing. And our Twitter handle is twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. A big thank you to our affiliates, and they include Swelio Meta Sim Racing Coaching, their YouTube address there. And the reason why you should listen to Swelio Meta Sim Racing Coaching in a market full of sim racing coaches, because Swelio Meta firstly is a multi-time champion official iRacing series, including the 2021 Porsche Super Cup. But also on top of that, Swelio Meta takes a different approach when it comes to sim racing coaching for iRacing, in the fact whereas many coaches will analyse the lines you're taking, the laps you do, and give you all the pointers and advice all in one go, which can be a bit of an overload on the mind. Swelio Meta focuses on the 3 key things that you need to improve on first and foremost to achieve your goal of whether it's gaining a tenth, a whole second, or looking for a more consistent and controlled way to drive the car. And once you've mastered those items as part of a dedicated coaching course tailored specifically for you, then Swelio Meta will move on to the next 3 points and such forth to make sure the information goes in a way that you can understand it and apply it to your racing. We also have their Race Anywhere, and well, Race Anywhere's web address, raceanywhere.co.uk, is the provider of the curated sim racing equipment and aiming to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. We also have Demon Tweaks, their web address demon-tweaks.com, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweets could help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions, whether in the simulator or the real world of motorsport. And then lastly, we do have Amazon. Their web address amazon.co.uk. The company is trying to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to Amazon Prime, Fire Tablets, and Fire TV. But now, ladies and gentlemen, speaking of things being on fire, we've had a hot pair of races today at Road America. But as we make our way away from the United States, we head back to continental Europe for the final time this season in our penultimate venue, and 2 more rounds in rounds 15 and 16. We'll be visiting the circuit to Barcelona, Catalonia, and there in Spain, could we see the tempo heighten to the point we're going into the season finale in the week after. We may see some late drama that starts to upset the championship table in both the gold and silver classes. For the one thing about the circuit to Barcelona, Catalonia, overtaking is very difficult, but if you can find a way to make your way on through, then you can come out on top with stellar fashion. Find out everything alongside that and more in a week's time on Thursday, the 23rd of February, as we continue the story of the championship. But until then, we have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain and Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay well, stay safe, stay smiling. Remember to do subscribe to the UK Sim Racing channel if you have enjoyed tonight and want to stay up to date, or at least give a like to the broadcast. But most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.